Welcome to Off Limits, the New Indians platform where we try to seek answers for the questions that live in grey zone, that are off limits from the dominant public discourse. Today we have with us Acharya Prashant. I'm not going to introduce the subject to our audience because we must seek answers, the whole idea of off limits. Namaskar. But do we all realize that we are conscious people? When you talk about consciousness, when you talk about a person who is trying to sanitize others about themselves and trying to find answers through that seeking of truth. My question is, do we, all of us, are we cognizant that we are conscious beings? And what does it really mean to be conscious?
See, to be conscious means to have choices. To realize that you are not bound or conditioned to move in one particular way as randomly determined by the material forces of existence. That you have volition, that you have a say, that you have an agency, which is choice. So that's consciousness. We all definitely think we are conscious. It's just that there is real consciousness only when there is real choice, which can happen only in real freedom. Unfortunately, most of our choices are not made in freedom. So even though apparently there are choices and a choosing agency, yet there is no real free consciousness. So we all live in apparently free, but actually very caged, constrained consciousnesses.
Are animals conscious?
In the sense that human beings must be. Animals cannot really be called conscious, but in their own dimension, animals are conscious. You see, it behoves an animal to operate purely by its Prakritic algorithm, right? So the consciousness that an animal exhibits is again very algorithm driven. So for example, you would call an animal conscious if it's breathing and moving and blinking, hearing, trying for food. You'll say it's conscious. Now that parameter to determine consciousness is all right when it comes to animals. Because there the very definition, the very paradigm is different. So if an animal is going by its Prakritic nature, which is its biological nature, its physical nature, it passes to call it conscious. But the same cannot be said in the case of human beings. An animal breathing, eating, running is indeed conscious. But a human being cannot be called conscious just because she eats, drinks, breathes, or even thinks. The parameter in case of humans is choice, free choice. Is the person exercising choice? Animals are not even supposed to exercise choice, right? Look at birds. The sun sets and they retire to their nests. They are not supposed to exercise choice there, right? It's algorithm driven, it's automatic. No sun, no sky. I have to be in my nest. the lion is constrained by its body to be a flesh eater. The lion cannot say, I won't kill. Same goes for all animals. Then the mating season comes and they will mate. And if the mating season is not there, they will not mate. And all that is very well within the domain of their conscious behavior. If they are doing all this, we will say, oh, they are conscious, animals. But human beings have to exceed their physicality, their materiality, their biology, which is Prakriti in Vedantic terms. So the definition takes a different spin when it comes to human beings. An animal is conscious if it's following its physical mandate, physical algorithm. And a human being can be called conscious only if she is exceeding her physical mandate. A human being limiting herself to her physical mandate must surely be called unconscious. Even though as an organism, she will exhibit all the classical attributes of consciousness, right? So the body will move and all those things will happen. But still, the learned ones have told us that just because you are eating, breathing, walking, you cannot be called as living. And that applies only to human beings. You see, we are special. So the benchmarks for us are higher. We are conscious only if we are free. And if we have no love for freedom, then we aren't conscious.
3 conscious choices that you made and you regret them.
No, one cannot regret conscious choices. One can regret only the stuff one makes in unconsciousness. So the question is a contradiction within itself, right? Consciousness is when you exceed both exaltation and regret. So what I said, you are conscious when you have gone beyond your physical mandate, which is also your mental mandate. So anything done in consciousness is beyond the scope of reward or punishment, regret, despair, or happiness, no.
So 3 unconscious choices that you made and you regret them. Who is this Acharya Prashant, and did he make mistakes in life? Did he make unconscious mistakes in life?
Now we have a problem of plenty. I'll have a tough time picking up the 3 mistakes I can call as my top ones. You see, one makes them daily. One makes them daily. So I should have given higher weightage to my own personal reading time. That's the first thing that I regret. I used to be a voracious reader, but since the last few years, with the work of the foundation spiraling up, it has eaten into my reading and reflection time. So that's one thing that I regret. But I think I'm on course to making amends. I'm trying to be more disciplined so that I can dedicate at least 2, 3, 4 hours to my reading. That's one thing. It should have been clearer in distinguishing between emotion and virtue. So the line gets blurred there often, right? So love for truth is one thing while sentimentality is another thing. So should have been tougher in dealing with many things. The third thing is probably the body. I neglected the body for long, for the same reason as I neglected my reading. With the load of work mounting,
But would you call this unconscious choice?
Yeah, of course, of course. See, only that which is unconscious can be regretted. So
are you saying people don't make bad choices consciously?
of course, a bad choice has to be an unconscious choice. These two.
It can't be a conscious choice for anybody in the world.
Only unconsciousness is bad. In consciousness, whatsoever is done is all right.
So are we saying that criminals in the world are unconscious?
Obviously, unconsciousness is the mother crime.
And therefore, the line between good and bad gets blurred only because there are people who are unconscious.
Obviously, or you could redefine good as meaning consciousness and bad as meaning unconsciousness. Good and bad cannot be moral distinctions. They have to be distinctions based on the quality of your consciousness.
So how do we then make sense of good and bad in the world?
To make sense of good and bad, the one making sense has to be very conscious. Otherwise, if I do not see, if I do not realize, then the only way I can label something as good is by matching it against some preset criteria or pattern. So, for example, I might have been traditionally told that if he is seen as offering a glass of water to the person standing next to him, or if he is seen as offering his seat to the person standing next to him, then he is a good chap. And that criteria exists already here. The moment I see behavior matching that criteria, I will say, oh, good fellow, or a good display of behavior. Now, nothing has really been known in this instant. Only a process of matchmaking has happened. So, I have an image, and the moment I see something matching that image, I call it good. Equally, I might have been told that somebody frowning at someone is bad, or somebody displaying anger, or so many things, we talk of them as bad things. So these are bad things. So I'll see somebody doing that, I'll say, oh, bad, so bad. But all that is just blind guesswork.
Don't you think it has anything to do with your upbringing as children, your parenting, your society, your environment?
The entire role of parenting and education has to be to awaken and uplift the consciousness in the child. Right? We are born deeply unconscious. The human baby is not too different from the kids of any other species. So that's the reason why we need so much education. And the proper purpose of education is awakening of consciousness. However, that can be done only if the parents or the educators are themselves conscious people. Otherwise, in the name of educating the kid, we end up burdening and conditioning the kid even more. So yes, you are right. A lot of that has to do with the way we are brought up. And that's why I strongly say that education is the most important function that a person, a family, a society, a state has to perform, taking care of education of the young ones.
Who awakened your consciousness apart from your parents?
See, it spirals. It's a kind of reactive process. One thing happens, then another thing happens, and as a result, something else happens. So there are reactions, there are responses, there are dialectics, and you move from one thing to other. But you see, every kid ultimately returns to home, right, in the evening. There is the school, there is the playground, the friends, there is so much, but you return to the home. So the home remains a constant in the life of the kid. And in my house, I was lucky to have books. And the more I think of what is it that ignited and kept on feeding fuel into the fire, it was those books. Plus my father would keep bringing books to me, so he was the supplier of the fuel. And I love to read, so yeah, that was it.
So wouldn't you then acknowledge that human species have been on that path of inquiry for maybe 5,000 years, ever since the civilization came into existence, where because of inquiry we discovered many things in this world. We discovered the idea of cosmos, the idea of consciousness. Maybe 10,000 years ago, there wasn't any human who thought along these lines. Given what the literature is, what the evidence is, it seems that the human species has been on the path of inquiry. Wouldn't you say that there is a process of awakening, process of becoming conscious?
You see, consciousness is something that every new kid has to explore freshly for herself, right? The fruits of consciousness are very unlike the fruits of science. In science, one person can know and transfer the knowledge to another person, right? Whereas in the domain of consciousness, every person has to work for herself, and a choice has to be made afresh. Not only can you not take much from what has happened historically, you also cannot take much from what has happened in your own past. You might have made great choices in your own past, but still life will ask fresh questions of you this moment. So consciousness is a continuous real-time exercise. So we cannot say that mankind has been on an upward journey of consciousness since the last 5,000 years. No, that cannot be said. Yes, there have been individuals who have displayed wisdom, consciousness, the urge to know, but mankind as a whole has been pretty much stagnant, right? In fact, what has happened is that because of growth of science and the benefits of technology, the need to go inwards has actually reduced in modern times, because it is often suffering that makes you look at yourself and question yourself. But the material aspects of suffering have largely been taken care of. And that is because of advancement in education, in knowledge, in science, in economics. So
are you saying that science or human inquiry or human search for truth in their own way is a stumbling block in the path of consciousness?
It is the means, not a stumbling block. It is the means. Stumbling block in the sense that if you do not deploy this means, then you will reach nowhere. You cannot read the answers provided by someone else and quickly elevate your consciousness. No, that cannot happen. On the other hand, when it comes to science, you can very well hold a mobile phone developed by someone else and use it. And it will be useful. Nobody knows how exactly a mobile phone functions, right? But it does function for everybody. The same thing does not apply to the inner world. There, everybody has to work on himself. Heritage is useful only to a very limited extent.
But why does everyone need to follow this path? Where's the need?
How would you feel if this question is not answered? That's the need. Just as one needs her questions to be answered, similarly one needs consciousness to be elevated. Please understand, animals do not have too many questions. We have questions. Why do we have questions? Because we have consciousness that experiences lack of fulfillment. From this urge to be fulfilled arise our questions, right? Think, if you have a question and it doesn't get answered, how do you feel? You feel restless and frustrated, right? And that's the nature of unfulfilled consciousness. It cannot be at rest. And that's why inquiring is not only important, but actually mandatory. If you do not inquire, you will remain restless within. It's another matter.
Now,
that we adjust with our restlessness, that we come to terms with our restlessness. We say, fine, we are restless, and that is probably the normal state. And that's a very unfortunate thing to say.
Well, let me look at this whole issue from somebody who gets up in the morning, goes to his farm, does farming all day, brings food on the table for his children and his family. Do you think this man's life, where he's in a way carrying the same boulder, the same rock, what we call as the myth of Sisyphus, and in this process, where does he have the time, or where does he have even the urge to know and inquire beyond what he's doing every day?
Why is he doing what he is doing every day?
Survival.
Why does he need to even survive? That's a legitimate question, no?
Because there is biological mandate.
No, the biological mandate says continue living. And there is another mandate that says live only if. And that's the reason why people have laid down their lives very consciously.
So, are you saying that if poor people who have to earn their bread, if they start thinking on these lines, they might end up committing suicide?
or they might end up becoming one of the several fabled saints we have had. So many of them came from very poor backgrounds. You see, you are restless, and that torments you no end. One of the options obviously is suicide. The other option is to heal your restlessness, right? Why do we discount that?
Maybe everybody does that in their private space every morning, every evening, or maybe people do it while going to temples or going to mosques.
There has to be greater sincerity. If people were actually doing that with any bit of sincerity, the fruits would be evident. We won't have an epidemic of mental disease. We won't have so many wars. We won't have such greatly unhealthy relationships. We won't have one person exploiting the other. We won't have, most of all, the earth in such a catastrophic state. Look at climate change, look at the extinction of species. So all that is testimony to the fact that we aren't looking at our lives.
Aren't you passing a moral judgment on how this world should be? Our relationships should be perfect, we should be happy, there should be love all around, there should be no wars, there should be food for everyone. Why does life have to be a utopia?
Life does not have to be a utopia. But if I leave you in a war zone, you will want to get out of it. I'm talking of the natural urge of consciousness to be at peace. I'm not talking of a state coming from an idea. Utopia is an idea of the mind. I'm talking of the fundamental need of the mind. These two are different things. Even if I do not ideate, there is a need to be sane. Sanity is not an idea. Sanity is the fundamental requirement to be alive. Otherwise, why am I living at all?
So, you're saying war is not the need of the mind?
What do you think? War is needed? No.
Well, some would argue, for example, that humans are complex. There is love, there is hatred, there is war, there is peace, and all of it makes us human. All of it is natural. It's natural to this cosmos, to this world,
what
to this nature.
What is natural is animalistic. We just talked of that. What is nature?
So,
what is natural is coming from the body. Unfortunately, even if we try to, we cannot remain creatures of the body. I would have been very glad had we been like animals, satisfied with just food, drink and sex. But that's not the way we are. Now what to do? That's the human condition. You cannot be satisfied with fulfilling just what is natural. As a human being, you need to go beyond the natural, which is beyond the physical, material, biological.
But who defines this? Why should I accept it as...
Your question defines that. No animal asks this question. No animal ever has a burning curiosity. We have those curiosities, right? And that proves we are different from animals. No animal will ever say, I want to be liberated, but we want to be liberated. We do not merely want even answers, we want solutions. We want a state where questions are not just answered, questions are dissolved, questions disappear. No animal asks for that kind of a state.
So since we are curious, and since there is this urge of consciousness, higher consciousness, isn't it human to, what you said, we are more disgraceful than animals. We don't go by just the biological mandate. We, in a way, also oppose it. We have destroyed the earth. We have ruined many aspects of this life. But at the same time, since we are inquisitive, don't you think it's natural for all of us to make mistakes, to make horrendous mistakes along this path?
It's beautiful to make mistakes. It's beautiful to make mistakes, but it's not beautiful to settle down. Human beings settle down at the wrong places.
You haven't settled down.
Human beings in general, they settle down. They settle down, and then even the opportunity to make mistakes is forsaken. So that's what. If you are constantly trying, exploring, experimenting, and then you make mistakes, it's so beautiful. Let there be only mistakes. Even that is graceful. But are we even making mistakes? No, we are not making mistakes. We have settled down at the wrong place, and we are operating from there, and we are stubbornly squatting there and killing ourselves and everybody else.
Is this because humans went on the path of science and technology and tried to make their lives more convenient? Is it because there is this strong urge to make life convenient?
Life being convenient is all right, right? We are sitting here, it's all right. If there is climate control, if the chairs feel not uncomfortable, all that is okay. It's just that primarily we have to live within ourselves. Science is useful in giving us a conducive outer environment, right? But you don't live outside of yourself, you live within yourself, and that's a place science cannot enter. So the problem is not that we started leaning too much towards science. The problem is that self-knowledge got very little space in our education system, actually zero place. So that's where we went wrong. The day somebody decided that we don't need to teach our kids who am I. So everything became externally oriented. So you were taught about the continents, the languages, the polities, equipments, geography, everything. But you were never encouraged to go into your own mind and question your own identity. And that's what has gone wrong with human beings.
But then I see lot of spiritual movements, I see lot of spiritual leaders, I see people in millions seeking answers through these gurus, through you, through psychiatrists as well, through teachers, through leaders, through politicians, through scientists. There seems to be an urge, there seems to be that curiosity to know who we are. But then, are you then actually putting the onus on the leaders of the world or on the system of the world where we all seem to have gone haywire?
You see, when you go to a spiritual leader, how often do you find him exploring nothing but the I? In the name of spirituality, we talk of everything except the thing that matters, the self, right? So yes, people are rushing to spiritual leaders and all that, but what are they getting there? If you read most of the books that go by the name of wisdom literature, what do you find? You find all kinds of metaphysical crap. Where is the question, koham, who am I? So that one thing that deserves to be gone into, explored, that remains neglected. So yes, people have this feeling, at least sometimes they are forced to acknowledge that they are restless and that monies or external endeavor will not provide them with rest. So they do rush to religious people or spiritual leaders, but what do they get there? What do they get there? So all that is not going to be any good.
So do you think that if people, each individual, starts asking himself or herself the question, who am I, they will eventually come to a state of peace, a state of this, not adjusting with restlessness? Do you think man and woman, parents and children, nowadays we have relationships breaking down, societies are breaking down, and you seem to suggest that if we all begin to ask, who am I, we might have a more cohesive society.
Yes, I'm saying that, but there is a catch. All I'm saying is ask, who am I? There is somebody sitting within us who will come up with an answer. So the question, who am I, will get answered, and that kills the question. The way we are, we cannot live without conclusions. It feels very embarrassing to just have a question hanging within, who am I? So sooner than later we are compelled to settle that question with an answer. I said, no, we are beings who love to settle down. So we settle down this question as well. Then you require an agency or an environment or a book or a person who can destroy the answers you have provided to this question. Otherwise, the question will come, but the question will be defeated. You need someone who can defeat the answer, the sham answer, the fake answer, obviously, that defeats that legitimate question.
So in a way, you are saying human condition is what it is, and it is inevitable for all of us to fall in this rabbit hole.
Had I been that hopeless, we wouldn't have been talking here. So it's not that it's inevitable strictly. It's just that it is prudent to have a factual assessment of your condition. Otherwise, one can entertain himself in a fool's paradise and say it's easy. Well, it's not easy. It's difficult, and we are living in very, very miserable times. And I'm not saying that as a subjective perception. That's the fact of this planet. If you look at what we have entered into, it's a mass extinction phase. It's the 6th mass extinction that we are already into. It's just that we want to continue living in that imaginary paradise. So the media does not want to talk of it. The leaders won't take this up, and you don't find this being discussed anywhere. But then the possibility is always there. Irrespective of how bad one's condition is, one always has a choice, and that's consciousness. So even if we are down in the dumps, the choice is still available. And my mission is to encourage people to exercise that choice.
But was there a moment, do you recall an epiphany, a moment where you felt something awakened in you?
There were many moments, and I am...
Give us 2 or 3 examples, or share with us what those moments were.
So there was this almirah containing the books, and it stood next to a big sofa set. And between the almirah and the sofa was a little space that could at most accommodate only a kid. So it was one of the cold months, probably not too cold, maybe November, maybe February. And I was found asleep there late in the night. And the arm of the sofa would have been this high, as it typically is, and I was squatting by the sofa. So I was not even visible, right? As a kid, when you squat, this is the height that you take. So I was not even visible, and I had fallen asleep there. And the book in my hand was The Wonder That Was India by Basham. And I was reading it. And I was never someone who was reading from cover to cover, because it was not an academic requirement. I was reading for myself. So I would randomly pick up a book, open some chapter, sometimes randomly, sometimes out of choice.
How old were you?
That was 9 years of age. 9 years of age. And when I woke up, I was quite serious in the sense that the typical childishness, that was not there for an hour at least. And it was not an epiphanic moment or something. It was not a spiritual book I was reading. It was
history.
It was history. So that's one that I remember. Then I was put to bed, and there I remained awake for another half an hour or something, and I was just staring at the ceiling. And then I fell asleep. So nothing too remarkable in this. I don't have extraordinary moments to recall. But since you insisted, this is one that comes to me. Maybe if I think more, I'll have a few more. There is a sequence of several happenings, and they were happening on a daily, weekly basis. You come across a sentence, you try to make sense of it, you try to relate it to something else you have read in a totally different context. You can't make sense of it, you go to your father, and he gives you a reply that you take time to absorb, and then you process it, and then you keep reading.